quick introduction here. The list of CEOs and CFOs that have attended a full day Beyond Budgeting workshop, that list is not very long. CEOs or CFOs for that sake. But today we actually have two of them in the room. We have Stig Skjöstad, who is the CEO of the Norwegian Automotive Federation, NAF. We have Per Øyvind Olsen, the CFO, and a colleague, Erik Bjerke. And Stig, thank you very much for taking time out from a busy schedule to fly down from Oslo with your colleagues to be here and present the NAF case.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm together here with my colleagues from NAF, the CFO and the guy who is in head of the financial department, and we have been into Beyond Budgeting for a couple of years, and we are also part of this round table. So what I will talk about, or been asked to talk about, is really our journey of development in NAF. And what is NAF? You probably have in Switzerland, our sister club is the TCS. You have ANVB in the Netherlands, you have ADAC in Germany, and so forth. And there is approximately 144 of these clubs around the world, together with 80 million members or something like that globally. So what is special with us when it comes to this and the theme of Beyond Budgeting? Because I think there is two perspectives of this, which I've been sitting and reflecting on when it comes to the whole theme and the whole method of Beyond Budgeting. The one thing is to look on Beyond Budgeting as a new method, a new system that you're trying to force on the organization and asking the organization to change, to behave into this new system. And the other way is a management view based on the environment of your organization, the market, and the market changes, and your need for more flexibility and a new tool when it comes to planning how to use the money or earn money. And the last thing is our perspective into it. We chose Beyond Budgeting as a tool based on big changes in the market and a big need for change in the whole organization and how we really look on the world. So NAF is a membership organization. We have 500,000 members. That's 10% of the population in Norway. 400 employees. 2,500 volunteers, 160 locations all over the country, big distribution, and we are also a part of the international network. That means that if you're a German ADAC or a member coming to Norway, you can get the services also in Norway and so forth. So we are big of a big system. The thing in this market, when it comes to mobility, and cars, it's in the biggest revolution, we would say, since the car was introduced around the year 1900. When it comes to the inflection of how we look on mobility and the services and the products that are sort of presented to the customers. In Norway, we are a little bit ahead of some of these changes with the EV cars, electric vehicles. The numbers for January and February this year is that 50% of all new cars sold in Norway are electrical. And it's sort of making a big impact in just a few years into a quite settled market with the petrol and diesel cars and the whole market shift, what it does with the whole thing with ownership and everything around cars and the uncertainty when it comes to a product that costs a lot of money for a private person. In this shift, I think the sort of the main thing what we have been doing enough, and I will come back to this, is going from a fabric-orientated organization, producing a couple of products and being very good at it, in the illusion that if you are good at that, the customers are satisfied. But because of this change, we have moved the whole organization away from this fabric and over to a product and service company, thinking outside and in, with a high implementation of digitalization into all the products and services. And this big shift is part of this journey that I will talk about, so on. But first, let's go back many years to these two guys. Do you know who these two guys are? This is in 1876. It's at a place called Little Big Horn in Montana, US. And the big Indian War between the US Army and cavalry and the Indians. And these two guys, the guy in the front is Sitting Bull, the big chief of the Sioux Indians, and the guy in the back is Crazy Horse, the chief for the Cheyenne Indians. These guys in 1876 they beat General Custer, who was in charge of the U.S. cavalry, and this is a case study when it comes to this kind of perspective that we are sort of talking of. It's one of quite important case study, because I will come back to this later, but just to introduce it, Sitting Bull defeated Custer because of agility. He was autonomous in his organization. He had a very clear purpose. He was aligned, and he used new technology and disrupted Custer and won the whole battle in 1876. Just to put some new words on the things, I don't think he used those kind of words when he was at Little Big Horn, but let's see what happened here. At Little Big Horn, but it's a case study, and I will come back to it. But first, if you look at our history in NAF, we have a history that goes way back to 1924. We have always been there for car owners in the market on an individual basis, putting the human being in the center and the needs for the human beings driving around in cars. And it's quite a good story, but as I said, we were in a situation where we were stuck in a business model, running a fabric in an illusion of that if we are doing that well in roadside assistance, test control, repairs, our customers are happy. But in this big change that has been happening, we understood that these members are multi-users of transportation, more than just car owners, and we need to adapt to that way of thinking. So we decided, I think it was back in 2012-13, that the best time to change the roof on your house is when the sun is shining. So we have to go in and start to loosen up our business models. We have to take out sort of the core business, which was sort of in a high-risk end, the whole business model and the whole turnover in the core business. We put it out in new joint ventures and new companies, just leaving behind in the organization our product that is delivered to the member, but the whole production was taken out into new systems. And by that, we built up quite a big equity in the company, getting money for all this, that we want to use in the further development. That's sort of one thing. The other thing, we took away risk. And the third thing, we were able to shift the focus on all management from fabric to looking into the market and be sort of curious about what people out there really wanted from us when it comes to products and services. So in this picture, as I said, there is a big change in the market, and I will not tire you with the big mega trends, but I think the green shift, urbanization, new technology is sort of really having a big impact when it comes to our world, when it comes to mobility. And we need to understand that we have to adapt quite fast when it comes to new needs into this. And I already mentioned electric cars as an example. Second thing is that because of the uncertainty in the market, people don't own the cars that much anymore. They lease them or they share them or whatever. And it is not a mega trend. It's happening now in the Norwegian market. Our old business model was based on owning your car and being a member of NAF. But if you lease it or share it, how can we be a partner in people's daily life? So the big change for us was that we changed the whole purpose for the organization, going from a car club to a mobility organization. And this was when we launched this. It was in the news in Norway. NAF is moving into be a mobility organization. What's going on? You're sort of, if you think of a car, you think NAF. So this was a big change that we jumped into. And this is the, I'm not doing anything here. Say if it's changed, if the topic doesn't match with what I'm saying. I always hear it from my colleagues. But this is sort of road users is sort of the center. Still, cars are based on the core business when it comes to us. I mean, most of our members own a car, but it's in the garage from Monday to Friday, because then you're commuting to work, and then you use your car in the weekends for other things. But that is the purpose or the strategy for it. And this is our strategic view when it comes to this. And I will not talk very much about products and services and what we call local membership commitment. Just saying that that is what we are putting out in the market with a high level of digitalization. Putting up processes, thinking outside and in, and doing it in agile processes, really, which you probably all know of, so I will not use much time on that. But what I want to talk about is the bottom box there, which is the flexible organization, because that is what we saw is that we can't say so much about the mobility market in 3 to 5 years because it's going so fast. But what we have control over is how we put up our organization to meet and to be curious about what's going on in the market and sort of convert needs in the market into products and services. And how do we put up a culture? And we sat down with the management team and we put up this plan, how to put up a flexible organization. With those 3 lines, topics that we needed to work around. And these are not randomly picked when it comes to order. We were quite clear that we have to work our way through the strategy, the culture, the leadership, before we look into structure. And beyond budgeting is structure in that sense. So we have put up, and the first when it comes to strategy, okay, you heard the word purpose, which everyone is using these days, but it's sort of putting up a mentality where you go from running the business with a map, drawing all the lines where you want to walk, and over to using a compass, really. Pointing the direction and learning the organization to use the compass as a good tool to navigate. And the second thing is the leadership, which, as for us and as for many in a hierarchy, is order-based. And it works very well as long as the situation is static. But the only answer to being dynamic in a hierarchy is reorganization, putting the boxes around. So we needed to put in a new sense of leadership into it, and we have landed on the perspective of trust-based leadership, meaning that we really want to move the decisions from the top and out to the people who sees the problem, and make them having joy, making decisions, taking risk, stretching targets, whatever, to solve what they see in the Norwegian market. Based on this journey we have put up, because we understood, the first discussion we had in the management team was that, okay, let's put up a purpose, let's put up trust-based leadership as a new philosophy, and then let's jump over to cascading the purpose and put everybody on leadership training into trust-based leadership, and this goes well. But it doesn't, for sure. So what we have done is to saying that if we really mean this, we have to engage all managers into leading the company. So we have put up a board of managers, the former middle management, to draw out the strategy and also to define what kind of leadership we need to move into in order to move decisions and the culture all the way out to the front. And by that, forming a leadership platform that is defined by the management. When I'm saying management, it's not only the top management of 8 people, but we are some 50 people meeting every month to discuss these elements. And last but not least, structure, which we are all very fond of. We all can have a meaning. We all know things. We have all experienced things. But what we do there is, first of all, we are breaking down the whole silo system and going into teams. I mean, that's many people talk about that. But we are sort of trying to put this up in a controlled way. So we are putting up now 3, 4, 5 teams that we are learning from to find out what kind of method is useful, what kind of culture is established in the teams, how do they think in order to solve the tasks they are put into. And when we have learned enough, we will put up more teams, 3 more teams, 4 more teams, and at the end of the day, the whole organization will be in some kind of way team organized. The second thing is that we have moved into a new headquarters based on this journey into activity-based solutions, from offices to an environment where their location is so flexible that they can put teams together based on tasks, and then you can redefine before and after lunch and whatever. And it's all about sharing and being transparent, really, with everything that's going on. And it's quite interesting. We moved in on the 17th of December last year, and already there's a whole new energy in the organization, but based on, again, it's not randomly picked. You have to start with the whole perspective of management into it. Another thing is beyond budgeting, which is a good system to put flexibility into the organization. If you want to make the decisions out there and you need the money or you want to earn money, you have to have a flexible tool to support that kind of leadership. In that perspective, we have learned a lot about beyond budgeting, and I will come shortly back to that afterwards. We also have we have new technology tools with the Office 365. We are working on a lot of things when it comes to the structure, but those are sort of the main topics into it. And where are we now when it comes to this? We are on a journey, really. But thinking that this is a mind game, and it's a journey where we want to change the culture, the whole leadership, into be curious about putting up the things that the market out there needs. Every individual, when it comes to mobility, has a need, and how can we be fast in delivering that out in the market? When it comes to beyond budgeting, I think it's quite classic, really. Because what we experience these days is that when you talk to the managers, they are pretty into the whole system of beyond budgeting. But they are still a little bit in their head in the budget thing. I planned a couple of activities, and I put the cost on it, and that's my beyond budgeting. And I'm not doing it yearly anymore. We are sort of revolving every fourth month. But to put this into the next level, which is about the culture, to really stretch what kind of effect do I want to deliver to the members? What do I aim for? What do I think I can get out of it? And how much cost do I think I will burn trying to achieve it? And how much will I sort of stick out my head and take risk on behalf of the whole organization? That means you have to have a trust-based culture, a trust-based leadership, applauding people doing that. And that is a big change that you can't cascade over a 3 months project like an old strategy process. This you have to work on every day, maybe for many years, before we're really there. But we don't sort of, we want to keep on to try to achieve these things. But still, it's a big change, and the funny thing, because we are running around in our organization being blind, but when we get our partners in that are working with us, we have a lot of big partners in Norway, former employees that sort of left the organization 1, 2, 3 years ago, they say to us, we are not able to recognize the organization we left some years ago. This is something totally new, and what they are pointing on is energy level on the people. That's quite interesting. And energy, if you look at the speech just before lunch, it's quite hard to define. But there is something going on which is about people putting more effort into the organization because there is more alignment between what people want to do and what the organization wants to achieve. And I think that is quite an important effect of it. We can talk a lot more about this, but let's run back to this guy. Because what happened really at Little Big Horn in 1876? What this guy did, Sitting Bull, he was defeated for many years by Custer because he had bow and arrow, and Custer had rifles. This is a brutal team, but I mean, it's history. So he understood, if I want to defeat Custer, I need rifles. I have to digitalize myself. I need rifles to be equivalent in the market, but I have some strengths. I have a clear purpose. My purpose is to keep the hunting fields for buffalo as my ancestors did many, many hundred years back. And that is what we are fighting for, our rights to have our hunting fields. Custer's perspective was, I have orders from Washington to clear out the Indians so that the settlers can settle on the grounds, order-based. He was autonomous because he had tribes. And he said, if I have rifles like Custer, the way to defeat him is not by being brilliant on the battlefield. I will do exactly the same as Custer does, but my way is to do it only faster. If I do it faster than Custer, I will defeat him. And that's what they did. I'm not sure what's happening. They won this battle. Custer died. The rest is history. But if you look into the market today and what we experience when it comes to the mobility and the car market, is that with digitalization, the capacity that every organization and also us had in the value chain with our competences, our way of delivering the products, everything, we had sort of, that was our way of competing against everybody else in the market. And that was sort of the top secret thing of the whole organization. But with the digital world, these capacities are available for everybody, leaving you back with, if you want to win in the market, it cooks down to speed and tempo, like this history from, which is flipping back and forth, like from this story. It's all about doing the same things, but doing it faster. Then you have to establish a culture of that, a mindset of that, a leadership of that, and at the end, a beyond budgeting process that builds up under speed in order to be faster than your components, really. So that's the whole philosophy that we are jumping into, not using Sitting Bull too much, but I think it's an interesting case that has been studied for many years based on this whole perspective, really, when it comes to that kind of management. So, sorry about the technology here. I'm not sure what's happening, but should I talk about this again? But thank you.
There's a lot of innovation going on in the automotive industry, and obviously the competitors within that industry are looking at different ways of moving from cars to mobility, etc. To what extent is NAF playing a role in feeding into the industry as well as reflecting what the industry is doing towards the market? So you're sort of in between the two. I'm just wondering what role in terms of creativity and innovation is NAF and others like NAF playing within this fast-changing world?
I think our perspective on that is really to, one thing is to guide the consumers through this big change, which is a role of its own. And the second thing is to try to have the consumer perspective putting up products and services. I mean, take a leasing product. There is a lot with the contract, with everything that sort of gives you the feeling of being ripped off. And we are trying to put up a product that we know that has to be transparent at probably a better cost or even an even cost than the competitors, but we can put a brand on saying that this is sort of thought through. So it's a combination of advocacy on the one hand side and putting up products and services. But we are not starting to build our own cars and stuff like that in that perspective. We are very into to have a focus on the human being in this, the consumer into this. And it's in the Norwegian market, it's very confusing these days for people. They really don't know what to do. They know that this diesel car that they have outside their house is dropping like a rock when it comes to what it's worth because of these high numbers of electric cars coming into the market. And with the incentives and stuff like that being forced in by the government, saying that driving around in a diesel car is like smoking in public place, really. Sort of environment that has sort of been shaped for the last 3-4 years.
Stig, maybe more a comment than a question, but just one comment to something you said about beyond budgeting belonging down in the structure, or the three. I would slightly disagree. I think beyond budgeting is definitely also on leadership and culture and structure, and it's the interplay between the two that kind of makes it. But anyway, I mean, some of you might have wondered about what have NAF done then on the structure side when it comes to the hardcore right-hand side of beyond budgeting, and the answer is that they have done a lot, and they have very much done the classical thing. They've done the separation of the budget purposes and improved all of this, but we agree that this story should be focused more on the kind of the leadership side of this, given the purpose here of purpose and so on. But there are guys in the back here that can tell you a lot more about what they specifically have done. It's a very, very exciting story. So we actually had them on our Norwegian beyond budgeting meeting, last one, where we got the kind of full story of what had been done under the bonnet, to put it that way. So, yeah. Other questions?
Thank you. I like your image of the moving from the map to taking a compass. If I think about that being applied not only from your perspective, but all across the company, I imagine that there is much more leadership by vectors, by principles, by rules of thumb, heuristics, instead of the kind of procedures and so on. How did the middle management take that? How did they react to that?
I think, first of all, I mean, trust-based leadership is a very good way of looking at the world, and I think that is so applicable for the middle management as well. Believing that people can do much bigger decisions on behalf of the company than they do in a structure. They are making bigger decisions at home, buying houses, having kids, whatever. So applying that into the organization, I think that was thumbs up from the middle management. What we are into now is these principles, that kind of behavior we want to expect from each other, is now designed within this old middle management. This board of managers are designing this in discussions and in a process that we are in. But what we see also is that you get sort of a little bit of the old reaction. Can't this top management come out and tell us what the principles are and what kind of behavior, and we will deliver? No, we will not. You will put up this and design this on behalf of the whole company. And I think this is most of them are very positive to this, but there are also people that are sort of, what's going on now? What is this? But because of that, this is a process. You need to use time really to change the whole mindset over time by having a quite high intensity when it comes to the process. Meeting every month, really holding focus on this theme.